Okay, so let's get started. I just started the recording, so this whole session will be available online as well. My name is Martin, and this presentation is going to be about the Creative Cloud. Not just new features, but also about everything that you really need to know about the advantages of using Creative Cloud and having a membership. So we had this keynote presentation in the beginning where you already heard about a couple of things, you've seen some examples, but I'm going to dive deeper and show you exactly what Photoshop improved with, Illustrator, InDesign, and all the other things as well. We have additional like digital publishing and then Typekit, and how the Behance portfolio works, how can you create yourself a Behance portfolio very easily and quickly. So all the things that comes together with Photoshop I'm going to talk about. And also a very interesting thing, that how can you help the Adobe team to include new features based on your ideas. I work very closely with Adobe. I'm in the pre-release team, and some of the things that you will see soon were my initial ideas, like an improvement on smart objects, which they will release soon. And there was also an improvement, which also was mentioned in the morning, another Photoshop new feature called Generator, which again I'm going to show you how it works today. That's again something I was closely involved in coming up with the idea. So I will show you that as well, how you can incorporate your own ideas and help the Adobe team to improve these products. I think they have a really good way of using customer feedback, and they have lots of portals where you can really get close to these developers and the whole team behind the Adobe products. So that's what I would like to talk about today. Let's just start first with the website. As you can see, this is the Creative Cloud website. Once you are logged in, that's my account here on the right. I can see I'm logged in, and I can see all the applications that I can download. Some of them are not really applications, they are more like services. Some of them are online services, like the Typekit, for example, which just simply you just need to get started with it. So once you click on it, it comes up and then you can start using it. This was again demoed in the morning, so I'm not going to talk about it that much. Just wanted to show you that it's not only apps, it's also services. Okay, let's just look at the Behance, because that's a very interesting thing. And for those of you who might not know about Behance, let me just show you how it looks like and what is it really. Behance is probably the biggest online creative community website, and it is similar to Facebook in a way that people can share their work and comment on each other's work, like each other's work, but it's really purely for creatives, and it's from the most professionals to the complete beginners. You can find here anyone in the creative industry. And if you are in the creative industry, you have to be on Behance. It's almost like a must now, especially since Adobe bought, or they included now Behance in their creative cloud. And that means that we have direct connection between the Adobe applications and Behance. So you can upload your work directly to Behance. Now, just to see a couple of examples from here, the way you can search for projects, these are projects that people recently appreciated. They call it appreciate, not like, on Behance. But the people who appreciated these products, you can or projects, here we can see some of them. But the best thing is that you can find new projects very easily by going to Discover and search and explore. And a big part of being in the creative industry is to find inspiration, and you might learn more from just seeing examples, trending examples, than actually sitting on courses and learn about the new features. Sometimes being inspired and seeing the new trends in the industry is more important. So it's actually one of the best sites to spend time on in your free time, definitely more useful than Facebook. So if you look for projects that or areas that you are interested in, you can find them here exactly whatever you are interested in. So first of all, we have the main creative fields we can choose from, and then we have all the alphabetical, almost like keywords we can choose from. So even from like crafts, character design, calligraphy, you can find here everything. And let's just say we are interested in UX design, user in experience design. Then we can find these projects. So for example, an iOS 7 redesign concept. Let's just see that. And then we can find a nice explanation here of what is this project about, the iOS icons, lock screen, and so on and so forth. And this is something you can very easily set up, the whole layout that you can see here, upload images. You can see it's very, it looks almost like a product page on a website. That's something you can create. It's almost like a presentation, really. And then at the bottom, there's the appreciate icon. And those projects that get appreciations will be visible on Behance, and there's a high potential that companies and clients might find you through your work on Behance. I actually had a whole year of working in London in a design company. Through my Behance work, they found me, and I worked on Disney projects, I worked on Cartoon Network, Mattel, and lots of big companies. I would have never had the chance to work on these if I don't have my work on Behance. So there's a real potential of finding, for people finding you, clients finding you through your Behance profile. You can see like this one had 85,000 views and 550 comments, 7,200 appreciations. So no wonder why it comes up as one of the first ones when we filtered out the search. So to be on Behance, as I said, is essential, and not only because sharing your work is important, but also to getting feedback. On Behance, there's a really good community, and they like to comment and tell what they think of your stuff. So if you get your things out there, you will get great feedback from people, and it's constructive criticism most of the time. Apart from that, you can also have a work in progress area where you can share your work with your clients through Behance, and being able to show like the whole workflow, I mean the stages. You can get the first stage up, then update it, the second stage, and have everything done through Behance. We will have a look at that soon. Plus, we have even a job list area here, and although most of the jobs are US, but you can also find UK, and quite a lot in the UK as well. So let's just see UK, or let's just type in London. And so we have jobs around 20 probably, or maybe even more, based in London. So it's getting more popular, Behance for London as well. Although this is more for the US, this part of the website. But what's more interesting is that there is this solution now, or this feature of Creative Cloud, that you can have a Behance Pro site. Because what you just saw there is not a pro site, it's just a simple Behance portfolio, or actually I didn't even show you a portfolio. If I go back, let me just go back and go on someone's portfolio. So like this one is a Behance portfolio. It can be customized, but to a certain extent. So this one is not completely customized, just change the color of the background, and these are all the projects of this artist. So we can see where is he from. He's from Colombia, he's into digital art, illustration, and photography, and there are all the links to his website. But this is just a default portfolio on Behance. What comes with Creative Cloud is the Pro site. Let me just show you here in the list. Hit the bottom, that's the Pro site. And that would be, I think, around almost $100, or maybe even more for a year. If you have to pay for it separately, but it's all included in the Creative Cloud. And let's see how that looks. I have my one set up to a custom URL. That's the first thing which is different. So you won't have anything from Behance visible in the URL. That's just myname.com, and then it's not like behance.net slash whoever's the user, and there's no Behance frame around it. It's just purely whatever I want to set up. So I can purely customize this. The only thing here visible is the follow on Behance, which again is an option I can get rid of if I want to. And all this that's visible here can be linked to my Behance portfolio, so it gets the feed from my portfolio. I don't have to do anything with this. Whatever I upload to my Behance portfolio can be linked to this pro site, and then it just simply appears here as well. And there's so much more options as well which you can use. So to have your own portfolio website, even if you don't use Pro Site, Behance is great. But if you have Pro Site, then you have the option to have a fully customizable portfolio site like this. Okay, so that's about Behance. And then let's just go to Photoshop. I would like to also mention that I already mentioned that you can sync everything or upload things to Behance. While we talked about Behance, for example, if I want to upload this one, I only need to say share on Behance. So I'm in Photoshop, I click on share on Behance, and I will get this window coming up where I can upload it. And I would like to show you, I actually use this with my clients. I work with lots of US companies, and the easiest way to work together with them is to use Behance. I use it with lots of projects. Because what I can do is, while I'm working in Photoshop, I can make some amends that they ask me, and then immediately upload it to Behance. I think it's just the internet connection is quite slow here. Probably lots of people using it at the moment. So I might come back to this. Let's just see if it comes in. So I can't use Photoshop in the at the same time. I will give it a try again a bit later. So that's the direct connection from Photoshop is really streamlines the whole creative process. But let's just get down to some of the interesting new features in Photoshop. There's quite a lot of improvements. And before I get to the most important, well, the biggest ones, I would like to show you the latest one, and that's called Generator. Now, this came out, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure, maybe just last week, so this is very new. And that's another thing about Creative Cloud, that now we don't have to wait for the updates for every like year or 2 years. Whenever something new technology is created, they release it as an update. And you can just simply update your Creative Cloud application. And this one was one of the recent additions to Photoshop, the Generator, which we can have a look at. Let me just open up this Photoshop file. Okay. So it's a website mock-up. We can see that we have here a couple of elements. And then we have everything the way. Okay. So what's happening? Is it still trying to connect? Let me just close these and open this again. For some reason. Maybe it's the mouse. Something doesn't work properly. Okay, now it's better. Okay, so what I would like to show you is this feature, which you can find in the preferences. So let me just go to preferences, general, plugins. There's something wrong with the internet connection. I think that's the problem here. sorry, again, we will have to wait a little bit for this. I will show it at the end of the session. Hopefully we will have better internet connection. Again, for this one we need that. But basically the feature that they introduced is that if you save file or the layer names using extensions, file extensions like GIF, JPEG or PNG, they automatically can be saved without doing anything. So you can set up your layer structure using these file extensions, and then those layers will be saved out automatically from Photoshop. That's one of the new features they added, and it would be better if I could demo it, but because of the internet connection, unfortunately I can't show it properly. But let me just go back to something that we don't need internet for. Camera shake reduction, that was a new feature they added. And this is before and after. This is what you can achieve with this feature. Now, this is like a sharpening feature, but actually it's much more advanced than that, because what this feature can do is it tracks the blur lines of your image. So whenever your hand was shaking when you took a photo, these blur can be removed with the camera shake reduction, and you can get much more clear image. Let me show you another example as well here. Again, before and after, you can see the difference, how clear it becomes after. And I can show you this real time how it works in Photoshop. So that's the original file, okay, the one with the shake, camera shake on it. And if I go to the filter menu, what's wrong with this? Sorry. My mouse seems to be dead, and I don't have space for my tablet, so it's a bit difficult. So it's under sharpen, shake reduction. Okay, and here we can see it automatically starts working on the image. There's a little progress bar here, and look at that. That's the immediate effect. That was before, and that's after. Even these little details, the texture, it's a little statue, and even the details on the hoodie part becomes really clear and high contrast. And you can specify which areas are the most important for you. So you can always click on this icon here, and you can select the area that you would like to focus on and use. And then you can recalculate the whole camera shake reduction, and of course you can always add more options here from the right. I just wanted to show this quickly. So that's one of the new features of Photoshop CC. I'll show you another one. The other one is camera raw is a big addition to the Creative Cloud. Because Camera Raw was only available outside of Photoshop. Camera Raw is like a plugin which can be accessed from Bridge. I'm using Bridge, which is the file management application for the Creative Cloud and Adobe products. So it can be accessed from here. If I double click on a file, a Camera Raw file, which is a much higher tonal range photograph than a compressed version like a JPEG. So this is Camera Raw, where we can edit lots of things. This could only be accessed from Bridge or from Photoshop, but not directly inside Photoshop. But now in the new Creative Cloud, what I can do is I can say to open an image, like a JPEG image, I can open that in Photoshop, but still apply a Camera Raw filter on it. So that's the new feature here, Camera Raw filter. And especially it becomes useful if you turn your layer into a smart object. You right click on a layer and then you choose convert to smart object, and once it's set up as a smart object, then your Camera Raw filter will be completely non-destructive. So that's when I select it, becomes the same thing. We see the same plugin, the Camera Raw plugin. And for example, in this image I would like to change the temperature a bit, make it a little bit warmer, and maybe add on the sky a radial filter. I'm using this graduated filter. In the sky I would like to turn down the exposure a bit and add a little bit more blue on the sky, something like that. And then also I would like to just go back and increase the shadows, so see a little bit more details there, and reduce the highlights. So all these changes will be completely non-destructive, because as soon as I click on OK, the image will update and we will see a smart filter. So the whole camera raw plugin is added as a camera raw filter. And that's a great thing, because I can turn this off to see before and after, and I can double click on the filter itself to make edits to it. So I can double click and then it opens up from the same place where I just finished editing it. So that's one thing, but there's also Camera Raw itself improved a lot, because now what we can do, there's a lot of things we can do. For example, even simple things like getting rid of spots from an image. When you open it up in Camera Raw, now we have a better way of reviewing them, and that's the spot removal tool. You select spot removal tool, and before we had to hunt for these little details, which like that one you can see there in the middle, there's a spot. These are all the dust in the lens or in the sensor of your camera. But there's an option now here called visualize spots. If you turn that on, you will see this strange view, but it's great for finding those spots, especially if you drag it all the way up. See, now I can see all of those little obscure spots as well, and I can always set my size a bit smaller, and then I just click on these and get rid of them, like that. So that's a very useful feature for photographers. And if I turn off visualize spots, I can show you that's after. So it's very easy to get rid of. But that's not all, because we have also a retouching improvement in Camera Raw. And if I want to get rid of all of this rubbish on the ground on this image, now instead of using the spot removal tool and making like big adjustments by setting the size of the brush really big and trying to cover areas like that one there, instead of doing this, what I can do, I just press backspace, what I can do is have a smaller size and draw over an area. Now that's something that's again new in CC. So I can draw over it the area, and it will automatically replace it with something else from the image. So I can very quickly and easily go over these areas, and all this is done in Camera Raw. So I don't even have to go into Photoshop, directly in Camera Raw on a Camera Raw file. And that's, at first of all, saves time, and most importantly, it will give you a better quality, because you are still working in your high bit depth Camera Raw file. So you can see even big areas like this can be replaced very easily. We can maybe move this around just to make it less obvious that it has been copied, and that one there. And I haven't had to really do anything, and we can see before and after, and just, yeah, it was showing just slowly before and after, and we can get rid of the overlays just to see how it looks. So it's a very fast and easy way to retouch images using now the brush. It's like a brush now, it's not just a simple circle as it used to be. Okay, there's another feature called the Radial Filter, which is very useful whenever you want to apply changes locally in Camera Raw. Once again, let me just turn this into a smart object. Go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and it's this is the new feature called Radial Filter. And with this one, I can make a selection of the image, like the area where I have that person in the background, and then I can decide whether I want to affect the area inside the circle or outside. So keep that intact and affect everything else, or focus on that. So for example, if I want to darken everything apart from him, I can choose outside here at the bottom, and I can set back the details the way they were. Let me just set back everything like that. And maybe if I want to make everything darker and just concentrate on that area, I can do that as well. But in this case, what I would like to do is choose inside, so only affect that area. And on that area, I would like to increase the saturation and the shadows, increase that as well a bit, reduce the highlights, and maybe increase the exposure as well, just a little bit like that. And then we can see we added a little bit more focus on that area. Just for the sake of this presentation, I will add more exposure. So let's just see that really emphasize that part of the image. And if I want to, I can duplicate the filter by just simply right click, duplicate, and then I can move another filter, another radial filter in another part of my image. Like let's just set it up here, for example, like that, and then put it here on this person. And once again, let's see before and after. So I added these two almost like spotlights on the areas which I wanted to emphasize. And then the great thing about Camera Raw is that you can always come back and make changes to these areas. So all the options that you use, you can always make changes to them individually. Okay, so that's one way of using this tool, but I show you another example as well. There's a photo here which is very dark, it's very underexposed. Because it's a very difficult lighting situation, and without a flash it's hard to take good pictures in these cases, and without a stand. But what you can do now is to use the same tool, the Radial Filter, and we will literally create a spotlight which we can set up from the right, so we can increase the exposure, can increase the shadows, and maybe we can also increase clarity a little bit, like that. And now if I move this spotlight around, you can see it really works like a cool torchlight, which I can add anywhere in my image, and it will always show details wherever I want to. And I can make this bigger, I can set it smaller, whatever I want to do with it. Plus, remember, we can always change which area to affect. We can say affect everything outside and then just keep that dark in the middle, or maybe affect everything apart from that window in the back, because we don't want to overexpose that part. So I can make my circle smaller and say affect everything apart from this here. Obviously now it's a bit too bright, so I just reduce the exposure, and we have a perfect exposure on the image. Okay, so let's see before and after. So it's like a torchlight, but you can also invert it. So you can specify which area not to use or which area to use with the same tool. Okay, so that's the Camera Raw Radial Filter. And then there is Upright, which is a really cool feature as well. Let me just show you an example here with a building in London. I'm just going to set this back to its default values, clear settings, and just open this up. So there's a couple of features in Photoshop that you can use to change distortion and the camera lens distortions and stuff like that. But there wasn't really a good way of getting rid of perspective distortion, which is a very difficult thing to deal with in images. But now there's an automated feature which they introduced in the Creative Cloud version. So here we have, you can see the perspective distortion in this image with the skyscrapers in the back and even that building in the front. What you need to do is, once you are in the Camera Raw, you choose Lens Corrections, and then you choose Manual. So not in the profile, you choose Manual, and there are several options for Upright, and that's the feature for perspective distortion reduction. If I choose Automatic, I think that will already do a really good job. So let's see before again and after. Everything is nice and straight. Obviously there was a little part that had to be cropped, but it did a really good job. So that's looks like an easy thing to do, but if you have to do this manually, it's quite time consuming, and Photoshop now does a really good job in that. But let's just see a little bit more difficult example. So I'm just going to close that one, and I'm just opening this one here. This has a even more distortion. Obviously, we have much higher buildings, and it even has straightening issue. So it has lots of problems, this photo. But let's just see if I add the camera raw filter. What can we do with this? Again, I go to the lens corrections. If I click on auto, it will try to do its best, but still it straightened the image all right, but it still has some angles which are not completely vertical, which might be still okay to use. But if I want to go further and I want to make sure everything is straight, I can use the full upright, which is here on the right, and the full upright will do even better. Let's just compare auto and full upright, and if that is still not enough, I can even add some manual additions to this. So like vertical change, you see the way it's almost like a paper which I change in 3D. I can move the vertical to the left, and I keep an eye on the side of the building here, and I can also use a bit of rotation, and then I can also move the whole thing. I can scale it down a bit like that, and then I can just simply cut it once I'm done with it. So I can use the crop tool in here, or I can also just simply click on OK and crop the image once I'm here. So let's just see before and after. That was a very difficult image to get rid of the perspective distortion from, so we had to use some manual corrections as well, but at the end we did a really, Upright did a really good job. Okay. By the way, there is a quite interesting feature in Photoshop that can be used to fill in these extra gaps called content aware fill, which is something we can try to use in this case. So I am going to select a couple of parts of this image. Here on the right, actually, it might be better if we can try selecting these as well. I'm just going to remove some parts from the selection, like this and that. So we have this bottom part which is clearly empty at the moment, selected. Use the magic wand for that. And then I go to Select, Modify, Expand, and I add 10 pixels to it. That will expand the whole selection, so as you can see the selection will overlap the image a little bit. And then I go to Edit, Fill, and choose Content Aware. So Content Aware Fill will try to guess what was originally there, which is missing from our photograph. So we didn't have anything for Photoshop to tell what has to be included there. So it's like an automated retouching or addition to the image. Instead of cropping, it's like opposite of cropping. We are adding to the image. And look at that. I think it's quite good job. I don't really need to do anything manual additions. So it just came up with some buildings. Even it finished that building and added another one there. It's quite amazing. And believe me, it worked. I never tried it on this example. This was the first time I tried it. I just come up with this idea, but it's such a good feature that even on very complicated images it works. Obviously, you have to have some areas of the image that can be used for adding something. Like here, I knew that there is enough information here which we'll be able to use for this part, and there's enough information on the buildings that can be used there. So for example, if you have a crowd of people and there's enough people, then it will be able to add some people from the crowd, but in case of people it might merge some parts, so it might look strange and obvious that it has been retouched. But in cases like this, it will be almost impossible to tell that it wasn't there in the beginning. So coming from the original image, a couple of steps back, this was the original one. We ended up having a completely straight image with no distortion, and even we added some parts to the image. And of course, If I would like to get rid of that crane, that would take probably 10 seconds with the constant tool, but I'm sure you know how to do that. That's not a difficult thing. Okay, so let me just go further with the other features. Once again, just comparing the two before and after, seeing next to each other for the upright. Okay, preserve details is not that interesting. Smart sharpen. There's a feature. How many of you used Photoshop to design and not just retouch photos? Is there anyone who uses it for designing? Like website or user interfaces, things like that, okay? Let me just show you one thing which I really like and I use it a lot, and that is the properties panel for vector shapes. And there is something that was very annoying before in Photoshop. If you ever used rounded corners on vector shapes in Photoshop, it was almost impossible to work with them, because if you wanted to change the radius on them, you had to always recreate them. So you didn't have control over the radius on the corners, these rounded corners. But now, in Creative Cloud, we have finally, in the Properties panel, access to all the corners. So here you can see them, and you can see all 4 corners, the size of them, and we can very easily move this around. So for example, if I want to, all I need to do is click on this one of the corner icons and drag it right and left, and that way I can easily change the radius of this shape. Even better than that, there is a very interesting area here where I can select all of the corner numbers. So if I change them separately, which I can do by unlinking them, so they are not linked together anymore, so I can change them individually. Like I can set that to 0, and I can change again another one to make it even bigger, so an interesting shape like that. And now, if I have this area selected here, and I press Ctrl C or Command C to copy, and I select the other two, like that, select that, and paste, enter, that's it. So you can just simply assign the same setup of rounded corners for all your icons very easily. This wasn't available, so all the options we have here are new, these ones. So it's a really cool addition. And another thing which is new in the Creative Cloud is the isolation for layers. When you have loads of layers in Photoshop, and you would like to make sure that you only work with the one that you would like to use, you only have to double click on it now. So we have like this one here. If I want to work with this layer, I double click on it with the path selection tool, and look, my layers disappeared, and I only see this one. And this little red button shows me that I'm in an isolation mode, so it's filtered onto my selected layer, and that works with more layers as well. So now I won't be distracted by any of the other elements, and as soon as I'm ready with my work on this one, I can just double click anywhere outside and I go back to seeing all my layers. That's again another new feature. It's very similar to which application do you think? Illustrator, yes. So whoever uses this in Illustrator now is the same in Photoshop. So that's again another good thing, the way they try to learn these applications from each other. Okay, sync settings. Smart Object Update is another thing we can have a look at here. Let me just open this one. So there's a new icon here at the bottom, which is actually, there's 2 new icons. One of them is the share on Behance option, which let's just see if it might be a bit faster now, hopefully. I'm only on the wireless, but it doesn't want to load in. That's one of the new icons, the share on Behance, and the other one is the sync settings icon, which is really cool, because if you work on different computers, which I do quite a lot because I work as a freelance designer and I go to different companies. But when I get there, they have Creative Cloud. All I need to do to get all my shortcuts, my preferences, my interface, and the workspace, everything that the way I use my applications, all I need to do is to sync the settings. I have to log into my Creative Cloud account and then I can sync my settings. So from the Creative Cloud, it will download everything and I will be able to use anyone's computer the way I have it set up on my computer. And when they want to use it again, they can just again sync it back to the way they use it. So that's a very useful thing. It's like a 2.0 version of using workspaces in Photoshop. It's a more advanced version of that. Okay, so that's just something you can find also in the preferences, and there's the sync options here, sync settings. So these are the things you can sync. It's just good to see a list of them. Even actions, brushes, swatches, custom shape patterns, all the additional things that you might add to your Photoshop at home, and you might not think about it, that how many things you have customized in Photoshop. You will only feel it when you have to work on someone else's computer. You will feel like, oh, where's all my stuff? But now in this syncing, it won't be a problem anymore. Okay, so that's about Photoshop, and I don't know what time this presentation will finish. Let me just quickly check. When is the lunch break? It's at 20, so we have another 15 minutes left. I would like to show you InDesign, Illustrator new features as well, and I would like to also show you a little bit about the digital publishing suite. Okay, so let me just close Photoshop. Is there any questions so far about the features in Photoshop? Or maybe something I didn't show and you really wanted to see? Like I didn't show the preserve details and smart sharpen. Is anyone interested in those? Okay, let's go to the next one then, in Illustrator. Or let's start with InDesign actually. In InDesign, we have, first of all, a feature which was introduced in the other applications but InDesign was missing, and that's the user interface color settings. As you can see now, all of the applications, there is an option to turn them dark, and I prefer to work with this, but that's something you can find under the Preferences interface. Here you can set it to any of these default colors, or you can even use the percentage to change the brightness of the interface. It's a really nice feature. This is how it used to look like, and this is what you can go on the other side and join the dark side. But the reason why it's good to have this, it seems like it's just a gimmick, but actually it's much easier on the eye, the dark background or dark interface. And if you work late hours, you will appreciate these things. I prefer to turn everything down, even the brightness of my screen, make sure that my eyes are not affected. And you can also match the pasteboard to the theme color, which means around your document, the pasteboard can also follow the changes of your user interface. Another great thing in InDesign CC is the option, whenever you create a new document, to see a preview. Now, this wasn't available before, and I don't know why, but this is an amazing new feature. So I can turn on the preview to see how my document will look like. And even for like things like orientation, I still find it confusing sometimes that which one is the portrait of these two icons. I don't know, it's just not really intuitive, and it's just much better, easier to see how it will turn out. So that's the landscape, that's the portrait. Okay, I know, okay, which one I'm working on. Or if I choose a different size, then I can see immediately updates. If I add columns, I can see. So before I actually create the document, I can see everything. I can see how the margins will change it. And even if you are new to InDesign, this is a good way to learn what these features will do. So just turn on preview, and then you can see it update on the way when you change it. So a great way to really get used to all these features. And if you click on the bleed and slug, that will also be visible, and even that will be visible in our preview. So if I increase the bleed, we can start to see that red boundary on the edges. And if you don't know what's the bleed, it's very easy to understand. This is where it's going to be cropped. the image where the black lines are. That's where the trim marks will show up, and all this additional bleed area will be cropped out, and that's the only way you can really print properly all the way to the edges like this. So to be able to print something like this, you always need that additional area around your print, which will be cropped, and that makes sure it's nice on the edges. So things like this was very difficult to understand before because we couldn't really see it live, updating live like this. So for us instructors, it's also a good way to show how it works, and even like slug, which will be around the bleed, but it will only be visible if the slug is bigger than the bleed. So I can, oh no, actually, sorry, it's visible already, but I have to link it on all the sides, and that's it. So now let's just have a look at it. The slug is only for like information for the printer or any additional things, again, which won't end up in the final print. But again, that's something that you can only see if it's bigger than the bleed. Otherwise, it overlaps the bleed. If it's bigger than the bleed, then it will start showing up outside of the bleed. So all these little things now you can see a live update before you actually create the document. Okay, just close that one. And then let me show you another cool feature about using fonts and type in InDesign. So for example, I select this text here, and there's a useful keyboard shortcut in InDesign to quickly select the font selector area. If you press Command 6, that will highlight the font selector area. Now I can start typing in something, let's say Behance. I want to use that font. I started typing it and I can immediately use it, and then I just press enter and it's assigned to my paragraph there. So Command 6 is a fast way to select it. But let's just have a closer look at this font selector area here. If I zoom a little bit closer to it, we will see a couple of new things here. First of all, we see these little stars, which means that we can favorite fonts, select fonts as favorites, and that works in the other applications as well, in Illustrator, for example. So if I like Behance, I can just select it as a favorite font, and I also like Tryon Pro. And then if I want to only see my favorites, I can filter them out very easily. So next time, if let's just say I have 10 favorite fonts, I can very easily find them like that if I don't remember their names. Plus, there's an option for the search in this font selector area. We can search the entire font name or only search first words only. That's the way that InDesign and Illustrator worked before, but now if we can search the entire font name, that means I can very quickly find fonts which has the word bold in them. So now I have a list of all the bold fonts in my library or on my computer. Or I can type in bold italic, so the two together, and then I get another filtering. Or I can search for pro fonts, which means they have a lot of more characters than the other fonts. So before, we could only search for the first words. Now we can search for anything inside the font names. So that's a very, very useful thing as well. And let's see. I'm afraid they only have it in InDesign and Illustrator, and I don't know why. I think I asked that already once from Adobe, and they said they are planning to implement it, but for some reason it's a bit more difficult here. Even the favorite fonts is not available yet. They have it in Illustrator. Let's just have a quick look at it there. Type tool, and I select this, and we have, I can't see the favorites here either, but the search is there. But no, not the favorites. Is it marked? Do you know if it's? Is there a way to turn on the favorites, or it's? Yeah, I don't know why it's only in InDesign, but at least the search is available in Illustrator. I'm sure it's something they will put into Photoshop and Illustrator as well properly, because InDesign is most type-based, but still we use a lot of type in the other applications, so they will have to use this because users are really into now using favorite fonts and search by these options. So it must be available soon in the other applications as well. Okay, and then there's one more thing I wanted to show you in InDesign, and after that I show quickly the Illustrator new features. The other thing that you can do now in InDesign is to create a QR code. QR codes are it's similar to barcodes, the way they work. You can scan them, and then you can go to a website or go to an offer or something like that. And I'm sure you've seen it on products. I don't have any product with me at the moment where I can show it, but we will create one, and then you can see how it works. So if I go to Object and I choose the Generate QR code, I can decide what I would like to use for the QR code. I can use plain text, or I can use a web hyperlink, a text message, email, or it can be a business card with all my details. So the way it looks like, let me just show you how it looks, so then you will probably recognize it. So I just type in my blog's address. Yes, I'm a designer.com, and I just click on OK. So there's my QR code. I can specify how big I want it to be. So it generated this code, and I can include it in my design wherever I want, and I can even change the color of it. It will still work. And all I need to do is to have something that I can scan this with. For example, on my phone, I have an application for that. It's a free application with which you can scan QR codes. Let me just quickly find that. It's here. This one is called just simply Scan. So there's, unfortunately, I won't be able to show this in big. I don't have the AirPlay on this phone. But when it comes in, I will be able to use the scan there, so you can see it properly. If it starts. Technology is not on my side today. Yeah, that's it. So there's the QR code. I can go back a little bit as well, and then snap. Maybe I do it on my screen. It's a bit easier. So for some reason it doesn't want to take a picture. You won't really see the result this way, but just give it a try. This way, whatever you set up on the QR code will show up, and the best thing about it is you can always change it. You can go back to edit the QR code, and whatever you specify here, it will work with it. So you can even set up a business card, and that's a really cool thing. So if you have a business card, a printed business card, you can put just a small QR code on it on one of the sides and include all these details. And if someone has an app which can scan the QR code, they can immediately add all your details in their phone or wherever they want to store it. So that's a very useful way, but you can have also text in it, or a text message, or it can send an email if someone scans it. So it's a very, very cool feature, and you can also change, let me just show you, that you can change the color very easily. So it doesn't have to be the same color that it comes with. You can always change it and add it to your design. And just to show you, if you are a designer and you are thinking of using QR codes, just to show you how important it is and how much of a trend QR codes is, I show you a project I was working on. I was working on Hot Wheels, and there's always like a yearly, annual collection of their cars, and I designed this for them. And this is what they use all around the world. It's a huge poster. It's like from here to almost the top of the presentation area, and it has two sides. And the back of the poster had a huge QR code. Look at that. And the way I did it is I created it within InDesign, the QR code, and then I put them, because it's in vectors, I could put it in Illustrator, and I added all these little icons. Let me just zoom a little bit closer. These are the things that Hot Wheels brand uses, the little cars, the logo, the wheel, and everything. And I even did this whole thing coming out of the QR code, And the cool thing, it still works, because if you cover or add things like this over 30% of the QR code, wherever you cover 30%, it will still work. It's a very smart thing. So you can really blend it into your design. It can be really integral part of your design, but still works as a QR code, so people can still scan it. Okay, so, and it's something now that you very easily can do through InDesign. Okay. Okay, that's the poster with me. That's the final poster. On the one that I just showed up there, it was still like just the generic template, but here they added the real cars. And there's the final QR code, and it worked great. And they had their whole campaign around this QR code. So if people scan that, then they can have like their own profile, see which cars they have, which cars they have close by that they can buy and stuff like that. So it's a very big trend in marketing and customer relations. So the QR code, and then the last thing I want to show, because we are running out of time, is one of the features, again a new feature in Illustrator, and that's the touch type. Now this feature works extremely well if you have a touch screen. Some of the laptops now come with touch screens, but even without that, it's a very cool feature. All you need to do is to use the tool, the touch type tool, which we have under the type tool areas, touch type tool. And with this one, I can start selecting any of the characters and move them around. I can also rotate them, so let me just rotate this one a little bit. I can even resize them, so I can hold down Shift and resize it. Oh, let me just try and resize it from here, yeah. Resize, maybe make this one smaller. Okay, and the cool thing about this is that I can always go back and forth between them and make changes to them. But the interesting thing about the text is that it's still editable. So if I use the type tool, it's still editable. So if I want to type something else, I don't know, let's just change a character there. We can still edit it, and the same alignment of the font will be available. Okay.
That's not available in Photoshop.
No, unfortunately not. Yes, it's only in Illustrator. But the good thing is that you can always move this into Photoshop. So you create it here, and then you just drag and drop it into Photoshop, and it won't be editable anymore. It will become a vector shape. But it's possible to move it into Photoshop. So it's a completely non-destructive way of adding this very customized rotation, scaling to each of the characters with the touch type tool. And as I said, if you have a touch screen, you select the touch type tool and you can just mess around the fonts like that with your fingers. That's also quite cool. I tried it once, but it's more like just fun, but it can speed up the workflow as well. Okay, and that's all. Now we just have some time for the questions. Do you have any questions? No questions. I was very thorough then, it seems like. Or it was very boring. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and have a lunch break now, I think. And then we have 5 minutes left? Yeah? Oh, okay. Then I can go back actually, if we have 5 more minutes. Let me just show you just one more thing that I didn't have time for. That's actually one thing that I think that generator, which would be a really cool thing to show. I might need to, yeah, if you guys want to go, then you don't have to wait for this, but it's just 5 more minutes. The preserve details is something that's another feature they introduced in Photoshop. It is about resizing your images. And one of the biggest problems, and this is actually will be very interesting. I think you will like this if you stay for this. You might know that whenever you resize an image in Photoshop, that destroys. I mean, you lose quality. But you might not know that even for rotating layers will lose quality. So if you don't start using smart objects, then you will end up having problems. And let me just show you a very interesting experiment that shows the problem with pixels. So if I increase the size of this document, I'm going to just make two versions of the same image and put it side by side. And by the way, you can use the crop tool to increase the canvas size like this, if you didn't know that. So I have two versions here. This one on the right I'm going to turn into a smart object, while I keep the other one the same as it is. Then I select now the one on the left, and I use the free transform tool, and I rotate this image a little bit, just slightly like that. And then there is a feature in Photoshop to transform again. That means it will repeat the same transformation that I just did. Keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-T or Control-Shift-T. Let's see what happens if I continue doing that. And I'm going to zoom closer so you can see what happens. And we would think that rotation is completely harmless, but by the time I get back to its original upright state, look at the quality. I didn't even scale the image, I just rotated it a couple of times, and it's not visible when you do it once, but it happens, it's there, it's already degrading in quality. And the second time, it will get even worse and worse and worse. This I call the whirlpool effect. It just really destroys it after a while. Look at that. And if I select the other image, this one here on the right, so yeah, you can see that was before and that's after, just rotating it 3 times. If I do the same thing on this one, actually let me just select it and check, yeah, it's a smart object. So now that I'm sure it's a smart object, I can use free transform, rotate, and then, oops, I might need to set up the center of rotation, sorry, select, rotate, and I need, let's rotate it around the center, yes, rotate, zoom out, Command-Shift-T, I don't know why it's rotating that way, but let's just see, once it comes back, you can see nothing is changed. Okay, same quality. So there's so many advantages of the smart objects. How many of you use smart objects in Photoshop? Cool. Okay, most of you. That's good. By the way, just as an interesting note about the pre-release and the new features, what I came up with, and I wrote this around half a year ago to the Adobe, that wouldn't it be cool to have these smart objects be able to link them to external files? Because at the moment, they are still only be able to be embedded into the Photoshop file. But for example, let's just say you have a logo that you might want to change, but you use it in 20 different Photoshop files. And it would be amazing to have a smart object option to be able to link it to an external file. So you have the logo as an external file, and if you change that logo, it would update in all your PSD files wherever you use it as a smart object. So external smart objects, and that's what I told Adobe that it would be great, because I had so many times that I had to do this. And if they change something, I had to go through like 20 different Photoshop files. And they are actually doing it. I've seen it work. So next update it will come out and it will be included in Photoshop. And if you want to get into this and tell Adobe about new features that you think would be useful, just go to pre-release, Adobe pre-release. I don't know exactly the link, pre-releaseadobe.com, and you can create. So if you are not logged in already, you can apply to be part of a pre-release program. So it's not closed or anything. Any of you can be part of this. And then you can directly communicate with the developers. And it actually works. I don't work for Adobe. I'm just a certified instructor. But I took part in this. And they actually listen. And that will be one of the major new features that I just thought would be cool to have in Photoshop. So you can also be part of, and it's not just Photoshop, it's all the Adobe applications. And they really appreciate your feedback and they take it on board. So, and you can also, if you are part of this, you can also try the new features before they come out and see how they work. You can download the new versions in beta versions. That's also quite cool. And all you need to do is just to apply for to take part here. Okay, so that's another thing. And just quickly coming back to this, what I wanted to show here, let me just open this image quickly once more, is the preserved details, the difference between before in CS6 and now in CC. This is when you upscale, when you resize and make your images bigger, the way it will turn the details, and you can see how much better we have the contrast and details on this one compared to the original one. All you need to make sure to be able to use that, you can see mainly on the earrings and on the around the face. The contour of the face is much sharper and more detailed. All you need to make sure you use for this is to, in the image size dialog box, which by the way is also a new feature that you can change the size of this dialog box so you can have a better look at your changes here. This is the only thing you have to make sure you use, the preserve details, this option. When you make the image bigger, just make sure you have the preserve details for enlargement, and then when you resize the image and make it bigger, you can compare the difference. So I just make it bigger, maybe even bigger, something like that. So if I change this to bicubic smooth, that was before CC, and that's the new feature in CC. You can see the difference in the detail. Okay, so I just wanted to point this out as well. Okay, maybe any new questions since we stopped once? No questions? Okay, then that's all. I hope you enjoyed it, and then see you in the afternoon. Thanks a lot for your attention. Thank you.